You reach an inflection point where you've built enough of a rental portfolio and you're like, I could realistically live off this money. And some people do that. That's fine. They step back. They, wholesale 1 or 2 deals a year. They go to the beach with their kids, those all sort of things. That's fine. There's the other people that are like, I could be looking at jets right now. Like I could start, I could go and lean into this and learn how to make real money. All right, guys, welcome to this episode of the Collecting Keys Real Estate Investing Podcast. Today is Wednesday. It's the Mike and Dan show where I, Mike DeHaan, and my co-host here, Dan Austin, talk about real estate investing, business, and everything in between. Well, Dan, congratulations. We finally sold a property, which is sometimes like it's a big win. No, I'm joking because we were talking just before we got on air about how when you've been doing this for long enough and you've bought and sold enough properties, like it's kind of just like not really an exciting thing anymore. It becomes an expectation, right? And
yeah. If it's an average win, I guess if it was like a spectacular win or we had something to be excited about within the realm of like what we had to do to get it or something, then maybe
if it was like super messy or weird or something like that, but it's like it's just so standard. And
we actually bought the building. Neither of us have ever been there. We've rented it out with mostly the same tenants, raised rents, did some turnover. We immediately had under property management. And since then, we literally have done nothing.
So it's been super easy, and one of the reasons why we've opted to sell it. So as the market started to get into like a stalemate, right? Like you can't say it's going down, can't say it's going up. Some people say it's crashing, some people saying it's not. It is absolutely just like the standoff right now, right? You don't know who's going to shoot first, which direction going to go. And so we made the conscious decision a little while back to offload kind of like our outlier properties, the stuff that is just like slightly different from the rest of them. So, I sold 5 properties that I owned virtually here at the beginning of the year, recovered $240,000 worth of capital, plus, made a very healthy profit on that because I bought them in 2020. This property, it's an 8-unit apartment complex that we own that is like an hour and a half away from everything else that we own. It's in
it's like
2 hours away, right? It's in like a very rural area. It's close to the Canadian border. Yeah, we bought it in actually on December 30th, 2021. And
31st, wasn't it? Like, was it the day before the first, or did we have an extra little banner? It was. We had to do it before the end of the year for tax reasons.
For the seller. So we had to kind of like scramble with it and those all this stuff. But like you said, we've never been to it. We just had a property manager that raised rents for us and stabilized it, and it's been pretty straightforward, and we decided to list it on the market just because it is an outlier in kind of like a rural town. And we just said like, if we can sell it for this, we might as well. And then sure enough, it's been up for a few months.
Yeah, I don't see any time in the near future, 12, 24 months, it going up in value. I don't see it going down in value, but I don't see it going up in value. And I guess stepping back to, it's a pretty good deal for us in the sense of we had no money out of pocket really on this thing. We bought it at a good discount. We took other people's money for the down payment because we bought it traditionally. We didn't try to burr it or do anything like that. We just straight bought it from the seller. And like you were saying, we just rented it. It was about, I think it was rent. Each rent was like $495 per unit, and we got them up to $750 straight away, pretty much right when we could, which was a few months after we bought it. We got them all up to that. Had a couple units turned, but nothing crazy. So got all the rents up, and we've just been sitting there on the cash flow. And the cash flow's been good, but it's not like, oh my gosh, we're cash flowing so much that we just like love it. Like it's just like normal cash flow for what you'd expect for an 8-unit that's performing average. And so, of course, we're going to give up some passive income, but we're taking the money off the table because, like we said, it's in a rural market. I call it like trimming the feathers on the bird. Like this is the time where, get rid of some of those things that don't really serve you anymore. And we can take that money and we can get a much higher ROI somewhere else with it at this point.
Exactly. We're going to be so we bought it with other people's money. We ended up paying him off with like some lines of credit and other things. We have some of our own cash in it now because of that. But all in all, we're going to be netting after it's all said and done, we bought it for $475. We signed our purchase and sale for $645. So after costs, we're maybe netting like what, $140,000 probably.
Yeah, 140, 150,000 in actual net
Profit.
after we pay ourselves back for the
and then we're getting back like an extra, 120,000. So all in all, we're going to be making a decent profit each, and then bringing in like an extra 120 that we can put towards our current business that we're really focused on, which is, our Collecting Keys partnership program, our wholesaling business, and all these things that are just much more appetizing to us right now with the questions that are sort of like lingering in the long-term real estate market. So, it's been good, but one of the things that I don't want to say is like alarming, it was just sort of a weird feeling, was we had the offer come in, we had it listed on the market. Cool. We signed it, whatever, literally no emotion. Whereas like the brokers that are involved are like emailing back and forth, like, yeah, great job. This is a great deal.
They're high five.
I'm just like, it's going to make work to have to go through this. It's just, oh my God.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it is going to be work. And then now the buyers want all this information. And I'm like, I don't really want to give it to you because it's like, I got to go get P&Ls. Like, what? Then I have to like email this to you. And then they want to like, we have a couple units coming vacant, and then they want to participate in listing. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I just want to fill the units as if we owned it. And if you guys happen to buy it, you get what you get. Because it's not like we're not going to maximize this, because just in case, if we don't sell this property, I don't want to be under renting a unit just to get it rented. Like, that has nothing, that's nobody's benefit. But I also don't want to have to deal with it. And it's like this weird place where the reason why we got into this business is to build a portfolio. And we actually did build ourselves a nice little portfolio quite quickly. But then we've transitioned into growing our other more active income businesses, which is kind of a bummer, because in a way that we have this, I don't know what maybe it's just not apathy. Maybe it's apathy towards our portfolio, because we're like, oh, that's work. And the cash flow, you say this, Mike, what is it? Get massive income over passive income. The cash flow is great from our properties. It definitely puts food on the table type thing. But like when you're looking over here at some of the fees on the wholesale side that we collect and all that sort of stuff, it's like, well, that massive income is so much more fun to make. So you have this like, this is work for, a tenth of the profits basically, but it's good profits because it does, feed the family and come in while you're sleeping.
And I think kind of what it is it's easy to have a little bit of like a sunk cost bias when you build out your portfolio, right? You work really hard to buy all these properties, do all this sort of stuff. And then it's kind of hard to get rid of, especially because if you're in the real estate space and you're doing it with any sort of level, people always want to know your door count, right? They want to know what your portfolio is worth. And you are opting to reduce that even though it doesn't mean anything.
Yep.
Because
it's a vanity metric. But it does. There's a little ego attached
right?
to it.
But the people will go say like, oh, I own 300 doors. 99% of the time, people are full of shit. It means they're like a limited partner in something and they don't actually own most of those. But reducing that number hits the ego a little bit. You put a lot of time and money into accumulating those assets, so it can be hard to, look at it big picture and step away. But I think there's kind of this arc that real estate people go through, especially if you start to take this business seriously and start to pursue it full time, where you're like, I want to be able to live off of my rental income. And in the course of doing that, if you do it with any sort of speed, you will start to get skills that let you achieve massive income, right? You learn how to wholesale, you learn how to flip, you learn how to identify opportunities, you do all these sort of things. And then after a while, you kind of reach an inflection point. Okay, you reach an inflection point where you've built enough of a rental portfolio and you're like, I could realistically live off this money. And some people do that. That's fine. They step back. They, wholesale 1 or 2 deals a year. They go to the beach with their kids, those all sort of things. That's fine. There's the other people that are like, I could be looking at jets right now. Like I could start, I could go and lean into this and learn how to make real money, right? Like big money where I can fly first class. I can like have like the luxury items. I can do all sorts of, I don't hate working. I want to pursue that.
Right.
And at that sort of inflection point, you decide what you want your future to look like, and you got to make a decision. And I think the people that end up doing nothing are the ones who are like sort of like drawn like they feel like they need to go one way, but they really want to go the other, and they're not honest with themselves. So like they kind of want to go towards the massive income, but they still feel like they should care more about the rental portfolio than they do. So they never actually recapitalize all that money, or vice versa. They feel like they need to pursue the luxury items, but really they're kind of lazy and they want to live off their rental income, which is totally fine. You just need to be honest about it and make a decision, right?
Yeah, that's such a good point, because you said it right, sunk cost bias, whether that's time or money into these properties, and it is a lot of work to accumulate them, and it takes a period of time. But you have to remember, I guess they don't have to be, but they should be temporary if you're trying to optimize and maximize your ROE and ROI, because what inevitably happens as you own a property long enough, big things start to fail. And of course, you're putting set asides for your maintenance and your capital expenditures. So over a period of time, you should save up enough money to replace a furnace. But like a lot of that's math equations, and the properties most people are buying these days, because it just seems like the last few years the numbers have been this way, and the reason why a lot of people are going into short-term rentals, sober living, adult living, because they need cash flow for these properties, right? Because the cash flow, $200 a door is great, but sometimes it's not enough when you're buying a distressed asset to replace major items that go bad. And so I look at it on like a 7-year cycle. And I don't know where I got that number from, but it's been in my head of like property ownership is about 7 years. And if you think about it, if you're burning properties like we hear a lot of folks do traditionally, you're buying a property, you're renovating it, you're renting it, you're refinancing it, all that sort of stuff. Hopefully you have no money into it. That takes maybe a 12-month period of time, 6 months if you're doing it quick and it's a good market. And then you're going to rent it for a while. And all those renovations that you put in there, maybe you did LVP, you painted the walls, you did some, kitchen upgrades. Those things start wearing out at about 7 years and start looking like crap. And then within that 7-year period, like maybe it's because it's lucky number 7, a roof starts leaking or a furnace starts leaking, or something happens to the property. A flood, we've had basements flood, we've had all sorts of issues happen. That's about the time when those start happening. And so sell that thing while you can maximize all the cash flow you collected and your ROI during that period of time, and then go and get that equity out of it and reposition another property where you can now get a higher ROE, higher ROI, and skip the line and skip all of the freaking crap of dealing with renovating that property again. One thing I don't like to do is renovate a property twice. It's just a lot of like stress, a lot of headache, and a lot of money. Just do it once, burr it, and then sell it in 7 years. That's kind of my model. It could be 6 years, could be 10 years. I don't know where that actual economic value is squeezed out of the property, but you're also looking at the depreciation and stuff like that. Like keeping a property forever, it just doesn't necessarily
and even
make sense.
Larger than just maximizing that return, right? It comes down to your opportunity cost at that period of time. Like for us right now, our business is on a great tear. I mean, if you look at our wholesale business right now, I mean, we got 19 properties in escrow at this moment. We got, 16 more contracts out, half of which will probably get signed. If we take this money that we are, our return on equity is decently low at this point. If you look at the cash flow, it's probably like 2%. And we roll it into this business, we roll it into our hard money lending business. All those things are going to yield us a significantly higher rate of return. And we have the opportunity to do that. So that makes more sense right now. And the thing is that's nice is because we've built up a decent portfolio, we still have a lot of other assets that we can use for the tax benefits. It's not like we owned one property and we're getting rid of it. And, basically just recovering some dry powder. And, there's so many people, especially when they're starting out. I mean, I hear this even from people who have been doing this for like a few years, and this is how I know that they are an amateur in the space. They will say, oh, I don't look to sell anything ever. I look at everything, I'm going to own it for the next 30 years. I'm like, you don't know what that's going to look like. Like, honestly, it's a very amateurish, immature way to look at your finance and to look at your business, to say, like, every single property I look at, I'm expecting to own it for the next 30 years, right? I mean, it's just like if you had, like, stock portfolio and you bought, like, all of the hottest, like, companies right now, and you said, cool, I'm going to leave this for the next 30 years, and I'm never going to look at it again. Well, what happens when, you bought Disney and they start doing, like, some weird stuff in, like, the political sphere?
They get kicked out of Florida.
But, like, seriously, though, right? And their stuff starts to tank. If you don't monitor that, you're going to lose money. It's just,
Yep. And your stock your portfolio manager can tell you the same thing. They're going to move you in and out of things as it's economically feasible and makes the most sense. That's just, that's great. I want to bring up a point too that you hit on and maybe pull the thread on is having multiple verticals in your business. You might think of yourself as just a rental property owner, but like what are other verticals that you could go and create income? So you mentioned our hard money lending company. That was just a byproduct of us being in a situation of saying, hey, we could do loans. Let's do loans. And next thing you know, you have a business that gives you at minimum 18 to 20% IRR over a long period of time. And so if you're thinking about, like, I could sell a property where I may be cash flowing some money, but my ROE is really low. What if I just started loaning that money out? Like, it's not hard. You could become a private lender, and maybe that's what you can aspire to, is say, hey, I'm going to buy a property every single year, and then over this period of time, I'm going to start selling them, and that cash I'm going to put into my hard money or private money lending fund. Or maybe it's a property management business or some other vertical that also gets you excited. Like let the real estate portfolio feed you, and it doesn't just have to be cash flow.
And that's a great way to, build other opportunities off of needs that you have, right? Or things that you're already kind of an expert on. So like our hard money business, literally how this started was several years ago. It kind of started with the loan that I did because we were wholesaling a deal. And the buyer came to us like 3 days before closing, was like, hey, my lender backed out. I don't think I can do this deal. And I was like, well, I have money. I'll lend on you. I'll lend for you. I was like, I've already underwritten the deal, right? I know that it's good. Like, we're selling it to you. And I was like, I just need your credit score. I want some bank statements, know that you have some money to deal with it. And I want to know what your plan is. Got all that from her. She was a veterinarian. She had a bunch of money in the bank. She had great credit. She was just a new investor. And I said, cool, I'll lend to you. It's 11.5 and 3 points. I said, great. Just took it. I loaned on it. I parked, 110 grand or whatever it was for that year that it took her to do that project. So it was a pretty big project. And I made a great return on that money. Right. And that sort of like spurred the conversation of like, well, why don't we do this with other people who need lending? And it allows us to kind of like, double dip, triple dip sometimes even on these deals, because you were also a realtor and you would also list stuff for people on the back end, and there's so many different ways that you can take your current circumstance and make extra money. So like if you're a rental property investor that you talked about having the property management company, right? That's great. As you go through, you might start to be like, man, I'm turning these units and it's a real pain in my ass. So why don't you start like a cleaning company that marketed specifically to people that had rental properties? There's a great vertical for you right there. What if you roll up outside your property and you're like, man, this grass looks like shit. I need to find some way to make the outside of my properties look better. Well, something that's really annoying as a landlord? Getting your general landscaping done. Right, especially if you want something that looks decent. So there's a great vertical there that someone can capitalize on.
Things that are adjacent to your profit centers already that add just another layer of income. Being a wholesaler, having an ability to do private lending is great because you're already underwriting the deals, as you mentioned, and now you have a way to lend money to really qualified buyers because you can sell them to who you want to also underwrite for the loans. So those little things that are adjacent to your other profit centers makes so much more sense. And that's really how everything we've always done has evolved. It doesn't mean it's like the right or the best way. It's just like that's how everything we've done has really evolved from us solving a problem or us just saying we need to iterate on our business to continue.
Yeah, or like
to grow.
What are people that are in our sphere asking for, right? So even when we started this podcast with, I don't even know why we started this podcast at this point. Like we didn't have any real agenda. Yeah. We kind of did it because we probably saw like something where Brandon Turner said, you need to have a personal brand because I just raised $50 million in a week. And I was like, we need a personal brand. We should go start this show. And maybe somebody will listen. And then sure enough, people started listening. And so we started the Instant Investor Program, which is our group coaching program. And, we have the different tiers of that. So we started the Instant Investor Program because people were hitting us up and they were like, hey, I want to know what you do. And like literally the first version of the Instant Investor Program was we did like a little webinar where we had 20 something people come on, and afterwards everyone was like, I can't believe you just did this for free. Are you dumb? And we were like, well, I guess we should charge for it. And so that turned into the Instant Investor Program, which is a group coaching program. And then we started having people join that, and they were like, this is a lot of work. Can I just pay you to do this for me? And we said, well, sure. So we started the Pro program, which is us basically running everything for you. And then we got people that were like, well, I want to take this super seriously. Can you guys just find deals for me in my market and I'll pay you to do that? And we said, yeah, probably. We can figure that out. The partnership program was born. And there we go. And it's literally just always things that are in tangent to what you're already doing and identifying the opportunities.
I don't know what else is left. I don't know what else people would ask us to do, but go ahead. Feel free to ask us. We'll probably be able to iterate on it and create something for you.
We'll figure it out. We can do an opportunity together, whatever it looks like.
I don't know what gets more like servicey than, hey, we're going to find deals and get them under contract for you and give them to you. Like, that's pretty awesome. I guess maybe we could, I don't know. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to stop. I was about to say maybe we could just flip them for them too. Oh, God,
no, that sounds like a nightmare. Well, some people do that, though.
I don't want to do it.
I remember, we explored that very loosely a while back. Remember there was that guy out of Seattle that he would call us pretty regularly. He was like a dentist, and he was like, so I want to flip properties out there. He's like, I don't want to do any of like the gross work. I just want to pick out like countertops and stuff. And I think we actually had like a small business plan about what this could look like, and we just opted not to go through with it. But yeah, I don't know. Just I think the big thing is being willing to take shots and identifying sort of what fits your skill set and capabilities, and just trying to figure things out. Because especially once you get started in business, and here's the thing that with real estate and, this like rental property and all that sort of stuff, it is one of the easiest ways to sort of build guaranteed money, right? But ultimately, if you don't like actively try to like produce more revenue, you're not going to ever have like a big growth. Like there's a reason they have that joke that real estate investors don't have any real money. Like, it's all in equity, but you can have a super high net worth. Right? It's because totally tons of people, right? It's because they never actually take the skills that they learn by getting into those rental properties. They never recapitalize their equity or any of that sort of stuff, and they just park this money and they just sort of like live a meager life, and that's great. And then they retire, they're worth $5 million. They lived on food stamps their entire life, but at least they didn't have to go to a day job. I don't want to do that. I want to
or they did do a day job and they kept growing their portfolio. The challenge is because if you sell a property, it's going to be worth more in the future. So that's like the hard part to get over. But you're making a great point that, like, do you really want to live on food stamps just to have a high net worth and a lot of equity when you can actually go out there and use that money? And it doesn't have to be in a shitty business. It doesn't have to be real estate related. It's just like go out there and find a way to make active income, because I think quite possibly what's going to help a person leave their job is to prove that they can make more active income. Passive income is the great security blanket, right? But if you can prove that you can make income, then
and the crazy thing is once you're sort of indoctrinated into that mindset, like that entrepreneur mindset where you learn how to identify opportunity and how to make money, you'll realize very quickly that most salaries you can kind of just like screw around and replace them. Like, honestly though, like really, like a $50,000-$60,000 a year salary, if you're making 50-60 grand a year, and you're not working at a job that you like love and you believe in the vision and has upside for you, go do anything else, honestly, because you can.
you can get 50,000-60,000 in salary easily. And here's what I'll say: the people that are making 50,000-60,000 on salary are actually probably working harder than the person making like 150 to 200 on salary. And so it should be even easier for you to step out and figure that out, because you can make $50,000-$60,000 in real estate a year without working nearly as hard as you do at your W-2, probably doing 20 hours a week. Tops.
I mean, totally. It's funny. Gary Vee, I'm not a big Gary Vee fan, but he saw this video that I really appreciated. He was talking about Gen Zs and how Gen Zs like aren't really joining the workplace. And he's like, it's like, Gen Z doesn't want to come sit in your stinky old office for $55,000 a year. They figured out that they can make $60,000 a year just making TikToks at home. Like, seriously though.
And what are you going to do, right? And that's capitalism at its finest, honestly. If you're not giving people an incentive to come work for you, giving them opportunity, then they shouldn't show up.
And I love actually what you just said there. That's such a valid point of that is capitalism at its finest, because the people that bitch about that the most are the biggest capitalists, because they need the low wage job to run their business that they haven't built in appropriate profit margins for. But then all the people who they're like, they're bums, they're doing whatever. It's like, they're real capitalists. They're identifying that they can be fully in control of their own income, and they are setting that up for themselves. It's just interesting. So anyway, so we're selling that property, which will be good. Hopefully, it all goes smooth. We'll see. I mean,
one of these days I'm going to get onto that little bungalow we have and do a lease to own option on that one. I just haven't. had the wherewithal to go out there, get the tenants out of it, and like, you know what I mean, like go through the process, because it would be a fun little project to do a lease to own on. You know what I mean? And when I say project, I don't mean renovate it, but I just mean like there's two I guess disabled adults that live there, developmentally disabled adults that live there, and we've tried selling it to the family members, and they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna buy it, and then they don't want to buy it, and then we're gonna buy it, and it's like, you know what, I'm not gonna screw with you guys anymore, because you're obviously not gonna buy it. We've owned it, how long have we owned it?
Year and a half.
2 years?
I think it'll be 2 years October.
Yeah. But great little thing. I don't even think we make money on it, other than we get a great 0% interest loan against it that is just, you know, principal pay down, which is awesome. Anyways, good little deal to lease to own, because we could really actually get some pretty good cash flow on that and just have it off the books, keep the depreciation.
Yeah, and you know, we can keep our 0% debt, right? Which is really why we bought those in the first place. But I mean, that's what I'm talking about, though. Is like, that is something that when you have opportunities, and this is also a big reason about why you should consider selling properties. I put this on Instagram the other day too. Is if it no longer fits your like vision or your goals for your life, you should absolutely look at downsizing or selling some of your real estate, because what's going to happen is, I mean, not only opportunity costs you money, you're going to start to neglect things because they are just not important to you. So this is a perfect example. Yep. We are absolutely making less of a return on that investment because you have better shit to do with your time than to pursue that, honestly. Right?
Yeah.
It's getting neglected. And you know, like there's that's sort of what happens. And I know quite a few people, especially over the last, 18 months, younger people who have started to who have bought real estate portfolios over the last handful of years, and they've started to get into business, and they're like, I realized I don't really care about my houses anymore. You know, and it's like, I could get a property manager, but then the second your property manager calls and is like, hey, so we need to know if we need to spend $400 to replace the dryer. You're just like, I don't even want to be having this conversation.
Yeah.
You know, and it just becomes a drag on stuff. And you can build systems around it. You can get an assistant. You can do all that sort of stuff. But ultimately, if you're not careful, you're going to neglect things. And that's when people start to get in problems. You know, I actually think that's probably why there's so many of these landlords that are out there where you're like, how the hell did you buy 19 houses? You feel like you can't get your shit together. You know, you have to meet them at a bar to get the PSA signed on a Tuesday at 11 a.m. because that's where they hang out. It's like, I bet you at some point that they were on it and they just got burned out. Yep. And instead of just getting rid of everything, they were just like, it just got out of hand. You know, that's how it goes.
Well, especially because a lot of those landlords tend to be older gentlemen. I don't know that we've had an older lady actually that's in that situation, but older dudes. And I think it's because when they started investing, there wasn't the systems. It was just like super basic. That's how you do it. So, you fundamentally could, and I know people that do this, that they buy and manage large portfolios, 40, 50 single family homes, and they get excited about that. Like, that's their main business, and they continue to buy. And I would assume on the tail end, they're selling some of their properties to keep growing their portfolio, but just refreshing that capital. But yeah, if you have other verticals with the massive income, it gets harder and harder to actually not neglect them, just because it's like set and forget it. So like 360 days out of the year, a property is not going to be bothersome. But those days, those 5 days when it is, it's just like, maybe it's because it's not bothering you for so long, and then when it does, you're like, are you kidding me? And then it always comes in threes, so it's never just like the one thing. And so maybe that's part of it too. We're just like, I just
it's always the one thing, and it always seems to be like when you're at the airport, like about to get on a plane, and you get your tenant that you haven't heard from in 8 months suddenly calls you, doesn't even text you, calls you, and you're like, no, what is going on?
Yeah, they're like, for like 3 days, like 3 days ago, I noticed that the hot water tank was leaking. I'm going to call you right now.
God. Like, for real though, but it's just a funny thing. We probably sound so fucking entitled.
I know, we're bitching. We're bitching.
Our portfolio is just so good; it's not even important to us anymore.
Such a drag.
But no, it's just interesting going through that iteration, I guess, as entrepreneurs, because especially if you listen to this show, even like a year ago, right? Like we were all about buying assets and doing all that sort of stuff, which is
we're doing a lot of renovations still. Like
it's just as you grow and evolve, you kind of learn what's important to you. And I think the big thing is you need to look at what your goals actually are and align your financial decisions with that, and understand that your goals can change quickly. Like your goals can change in 1 year if you have a good year.
Shit, sometimes mine change.
Like seriously though, no, I mean, you joke about that. Like we did stuff like hired a business coach, And in the first couple of meetings we had with him, literally my entire viewpoint on what the next year is going to look like changed 100%. It happened over the course of like 2 weeks, right? And I was like, cool, well, I no longer care about all the stuff that I thought about I did when I wrote my New Year's resolutions 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's all trash.
You know, and like all of a sudden your goals just get that much higher because, you know, you've, I forget the name for the term of it, but once your viewpoint has been changed, or like your basis point has been changed, you can't like unknow that information.
Like once you get a new
perspective, maybe that's what it is. Once you get a new perspective, you can't change that back. Like that perspective is there forever.
Interesting. Yeah, and I think too is partly like having different seasons in your life and you're investing in, like, very well next year it would be a different point of view on our position for whatever reason, you know. And so I think it's just having that conversation out loud that it's okay sometimes when you're like, fuck these rental properties. You know, like you and I go back for it, we're like, well, just sell it all. And not because they're like bad. It's not like because like, oh, we were getting all these phone calls from tenants or whatever. It's just like sometimes you're like, we could take all this capital and re-put it over here. That seems like fun. Like I want to try something else. Well, and also too,
it's start to accumulate more equity and more capital. You can probably do things that are less risky to achieve your goals. Honestly, like let's build a portfolio. Like if your goal is to make $10,000 a month, right, which is a lot of people's goals. You see a lot of people say between $5,000 and $20,000, depending on where they live and what their expectations for their lifestyle are. That's a shit ton of real estate. Like honestly. Yeah. And people will say like, oh, I did that with 4 Airbnbs. Like, you're a liar, first off. And second off, like, that isn't guaranteed to go on for nearly as long as like a long-term rental, which is going to be a lot more stable. Airbnb is a lot, you know, more risk prone.
I mean, even they're about to change rules in the city.
I mean, on that note, really quick before I go back, they just did this study, and there's like 674 Airbnbs in Spokane, and they've only issued 80 business licenses. So there's
well, we're one of the 80 people. Literally.
Yeah, so there's a shit ton of people that are breaking the rules. But point being, it's a lot of real estate. And what very likely could happen if you accumulate that real estate to make your $10,000 a month over a period of time, you'll be able to like look at it and be like, wow, my equity in all these properties is several $1 million, right? You want to know a better way to make $10,000 with way less risk? Sell all of that, take your $2.5 million and go and put it into a fund that's going to pay you an 8% pref plus like a multiple, right? That's more than $10,000 a month with no risk, like no expense risk.
With much less risk, or go into a syndication where you're going to have some upside, or just be a private lender if you want to stay in the real estate. But I mean, there's just so many ways. Go put in the S&P 500. Who cares? But it's just like a lower risk and lower risk financially, but also lower risk from a time standpoint. Because as we always say, like real estate, as we've learned, is not passive. It's not at all passive. No matter when you think it's passive, all of a sudden it's not passive.
And there's still risk. Like if you put it with a bad operator or like a fund goes sideways, but you're going to have a lot less things like, oh, well, there was a windstorm in it. Now you got to spend $15,000 on a new roof. Right? Yep. Which we know realistically, if you had all that money tied up in equity, having that cash is going to hurt when you have to write that check, right? You're going to have to get it from somewhere unless you got a line of credit or something.
Yeah, or even if you're like, well, I have insurance. It's like, absolutely, but get ready for a 4-month battle.
Yeah, right. Get ready for a great lesson that most real estate investors have learned about. Your insurance doesn't actually do anything, so why does it cost so much money?
Exactly. They make you fight tooth and nail for every penny they give you, which is funny because on like the flip side, if you like smash your car into something, I've never had anybody argue like what it costs to repair it. You know what I mean? Like they're like, take it to the repair shop and we'll fix it. And you're like, good deal. You get your car back. It looks like the same color. I'm happy. But your house, they're like, I just don't think that furnace is going to get replaced because that's an appliance and it's actually not part of the home, so it's not it's not covered. Yeah. You're like, but like a car drove through my house and smashed the furnace. Like, that just doesn't count.
That actually is really, really interesting, though. I wonder why that is, about how you're right. They'll write you a check for your car without even thinking about it, as long as you can prove that it wasn't your fault. But your house, it can be not your fault. There can be a windstorm, and they'll come out and they'll be like, do we really need to replace all that?
Well, shit, even if it's your fault in your car, like I've smashed into stuff, and they're like, how did that happen? I'm like, I smashed into that. And they're like, oh, okay, here's a check. I mean, they'll take care of it, right? Like, you know what I mean? But your house, you're like, the tree's on it. They're like, well, I think we can get away with just gluing the shingles back on.
Yeah, like, well, we're going to cut up the tree and we're going to leave it in your yard, and now you have to pay $12,000 to get that hauled away.
Yeah. You're responsible for the tree. That's not covered by insurance.
God. You know, I know it's now a major hazard and it blocks the road, but we will cut it to the edge of the road. It blocks the sidewalk, and the HOA is going to sue your ass for that, but that's your problem.
Man, that hasn't ever happened.
Not to us, it's happened to other people. But
I know, it's just so stupid.
So, anyways, that's been kind of our recent lesson of last week, though. And I think the big takeaway for people is, too, as you have your rental properties, you have your portfolio, make sure that you're assessing your portfolio and yourself on like a semi-regular basis, like quarterly, semi-annually, yearly, whatever kind of fits your life cadence. You know, if you're someone that's sort of moving fast and trying to make, you know, a lot of aggressive step ups in your life, do it monthly even, right? But if you're someone that like you're kind of in your zone, you got young kids, your life's gonna be looking for the same for the next 10 years, do it annually, whatever. Just, you know, figure out what sort of fits your vibe, but make sure that you are you're not neglecting it. You are reviewing your investments and your financial situation, and also be honest about it too. That's another thing too.
Yeah,
is,
totally
a lot of people, they like to sort of look at that and get influenced by outward things a little bit. But
it's like what they think they need to do because of what they've heard from other people. It's like you got to do what you got to do, and you got to be okay with treating yourself. Sometimes you have to sell a property, pay the taxes, and buy yourself a Tesla.
I think that's your plan, isn't it?
If there's something that you've desired in your life, like honestly, like it's happened, this happens to all of us. We all have these stories, but there's all too often, I've just even recently this week, like 4 or 5 people I know that are young in their 30s that have passed away, or, you know, in that kind of age group. And you're like, you know what? You don't have very many years left that you don't know, you know? And, so sometimes if you work your ass off and you've got a little bit sitting there, treat yourself.
I mean,
I don't know what. Maybe it's not Tesla. Whatever that.
Wait, are you like asking me?
I don't know.
No.
Oh,
okay.
No, I'm not asking. I'm saying.
Yeah. I was like, Chris, for me, it's definitely not that. I'm debating if I even need a car because I never go anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, like, I like to use the Tesla because I think it would be great, but like, I have a lot of other things on my list that I would prefer to do or own before that. But it's just like sometimes you think about things as investors so like by the numbers, and I got to reinvest this. It's like, you know what? Yeah, but sometimes, like, if you actually are honest with yourself of what you want to do with your investments in your life, and you look at you accumulated 10 properties and you've got 10 million or $1 million in equity, what's wrong with selling one of them and taking that money and paying taxes on? Now you got $75,000 and buying something fucking badass, or going on a epic trip.
I mean, I fully support that, but it's funny.
Don't forget that. You know what I mean? Like, that's why we're doing this.
Yeah, so. I mean, I think that's really, really valuable. There's no point in working that hard to try and like change your life to not actually change your life after you've achieved it, which is shockingly common. But,
yeah, well, it's too easy, right? Because you're just an investor at that point, and you're just like more. But you're not a. I don't know who says this. Is it Brandon Turner or something? It's like you're not a whole life millionaire at that point. You're just a millionaire.
That's true. Yeah, I don't know who says that either, but.
Maybe I said.
There you go. You're not a whole life. We can figure out something else there when we put together our. I'm looking at Jets shirt, which is going to be my new thing. That's my goal. Nice. So awesome. Cool. We'll do with that what you will, guys. That is your words of wisdom from 2 guys who apparently sound really stuck up when they talk about their portfolios that we should be more proud of.
We're just grumpy this week.
It's freaking hot out, man. You know, it's like up to we passed the novelty of the nice weather. Now I'm like, God, it's like 95 degrees outside today.
Yeah. That's like, ugh.
So So anyways, guys, thanks for listening. Please share the show with anybody that you know in your circle who might enjoy it. It's the easiest way for us to grow this show. And just like go tell everyone about it. Like tell like the person you sit next to on the bus, or you carpool with, or your cubicle mate, or your, I don't know, is there a holiday coming up? We got 4th of July here in a couple weeks. We got June. Yeah, when you go to your Juneteenth celebrations, go and tell all your friends.
Just bring up collecting keys. Be like, you know what Juneteenth reminds you of? These 2 guys, Mike and Dan, from collecting keys.
You should listen to these 2 white guys to celebrate Juneteenth. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
So, God. Share with everybody. That'd be great. And besides that, you should go to collectingkeyspodcast.com/free. Get your free 5-step guide to start generating off-market leads. And then eventually you can have a big portfolio that you bitch about too, if you're very lucky. So anyways, guys, thanks for listening. We'll talk to y'all next week.